My hat! Alright, so we're continuing the disassembly. We already assembled the front part, and I'm not replacing screws. I decided unless I really need to. Now, in order to remove the rear, you will need to remove the engine, unfortunately. There's no getting around that. And the reason why is there's two screws, but the engine sits right on top of one of them. So I will have to remove the engine before removing everything else. But at least you'll get to see how the engine works. Now this engine was replaced, which is why it has these other screws right here, which are 2.5 millimeters. And these are nice because they're actually hex instead of Phillips. So all you have to do is just remove these four, and these four are completely different than the rest. I mean, one, they're stainless steel, two, they have washers, so you will not confuse them. And this one over here, this one actually has the yellow cable, which is the ground cable to the glow plug. So if you are going to be running the Easy Start with the glow plug attached to it, make sure you attach that one. I'm not really sure I want to be honest. I think I'm just going to go with a glow plug starter. It's just easier to troubleshoot. Then I can see if the battery starts or not, if the right voltage is going through it. That's the reason why. So I'm still debating on whether I'm going to wire it as it would have been over the factory, or just use a glow plug starter, which I think is better. May just go with a better way. But let me know in the comments, what do you think? Regardless of what I end up doing, what would you do? I am interested in knowing what you would do in my situation. Let's see, this one here. Oh, great, so there's a nut there. It'll be easier for me to remove the tune pipe here. That way I can remove the tune pipe. Alright, I'm just going to place the screw back in the tune pipe. There we go. Tuned pipe is out. Right, so that is out. You just pull in the hoses. That's all you have to do. And these are new. These were replaced. Let's see. I wonder why they have green tubing for the bottom ones. Different colored tubing. Let's see. What is catching? Let me take the filter. That's what's catching. It's a throttle link. Not a big deal. It's actually very easy to remove. You just grab some pliers and you just twist a little and it should come off. Or not. There it is. Alright, good. And just going to remove this here. And I am going to check to see if there's fuel. Nope, there's no fuel. Great. And one of the things that you can do too is just put that one up here, just in case if it had fuel. That way you don't leak fuel everywhere. But the engine has come out, so I'll leave the engine there. And there we go. Now I have access to those 4 screws, just like the front. This has 4 screws as well. And I'll just go ahead and remove those 4. And when you're working, just be careful not to push your other screws from the front end off to some other part of the table or the floor, onto the floor. Here we go. So we have these 4 down here. And these screws, it looks like they have to be countersunk screws. Well, one, the chassis is countersunk, but the other reason too is the motor. I think it may interfere, well, maybe not. I don't think it'll interfere with motor mount, the way the motor mounts. It's only for the chassis, so we'll start another set over there. And let's go ahead and remove these over here. One of the things I do like is this does come with this metal spur. I'm just having fun spinning it. Alright. Now, when I'm working on the shocks, I'm going to open some of these shocks because I'm sure they have never been maintained. So the oil inside of them is probably horrible. Now, these screws, I may replace them. So shock oil does break down over time use, etc. And fine little particles of dust that collect on the shafts, they will find their way inside of the body. So you just want to clean them out and get rid of all that oil, because if you do not, you're going to get a lot of grime. Oil is going to look just brown, almost like, well, maybe not chocolate milk. But if you pour a cocoa pack into water, that's somewhat what they look like. So if you think of a Miss Swiss in water, that's what you're going to end up with in your shocks. A substance that looks very similar, just more viscosity because it's oil. Here we go. All right, so those 4 are removed. Now I need to remove these 4 over here. Sorry, I keep looking at the electronics and they make me laugh, especially when I see that this receiver, right, the 27 megahertz with a little crystal there. That is old. That is very old. As far as RC technology is concerned. Right. I guess as far as technology is concerned, everything's Bluetooth systems 2.4. 2.4 gigahertz. Now, just out of curiosity, put in the comments if you ever drove something with this system, let me know. Did you bend the antennas too? I mean, that was rule number 1. You always pulled on the antenna section by section, and then you always brought it back section by section as well. So whoever had this antenna did not do that. You can tell. Luckily, you don't have to worry about those antennas anymore with the modern systems. There we go. All right, so now we have the rear end off. I guess I could work with the chassis, but I already promised you I would work with the rear of the vehicle. So let's set this aside. And, I'll be honest, if you did the front end, the rear end is going to be very, very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the tires. You will need an 8mm driver. And you may have to twist a little, but there we go. And then I'm just going to, well, no, because I'm going to be taking one side apart. And here we go. Now the bulkheads, if you ever do replace them, consider getting the RPM bulkheads. They are a little more expensive than the Traxxas bulkheads, but they take impacts a little better. Just because of the type of nylons that they use. Again, there's nothing wrong with these except for if you really hit them hard, they will snap. Then you won't be able to mount your bumper on them. So here on the rear, we actually have a rear bumper, whereas the front we did not. But again, that's all right. That was all right. We're just going to run this in reverse all day. I'm kidding. We're not going to run this in reverse all day. Now, something that people do, speaking about reverse, is they will disengage the reverse. So they will eliminate the gears for the reverse, and they'll just leave it forward, just going forward. Which, I mean, you lose a little weight, simplifies the internals of the transmission. But if you do need to back out, you have to go fetch it. So, yeah, there's pluses and minuses to it. If you're going to do a race, monster truck race, then, I mean, you wouldn't be allowed to use reverse anyway. So maybe a good option. Let's see, I'm trying to see, there we go. So if I can press the suspension just a bit, not too much, you can go ahead and insert the driver. And here we go. Shock is out. And there is one. Now, many people got these and they're really cool, but then once you have to replace the shocks, or if you have to change the springs, because you have to keep the same springs on both sides, front and rear, so that the arm compresses evenly, and so it compresses this way evenly. If not, you're going to have different compression rate there and here, well, spring rates, and that could be problematic. You end up buying a lot more springs, so it's double the springs, double the shocks. And as you saw, I mean, you will still bend shafts because these shafts are pretty small. But I do like the idea of having dual shocks on them. I think it was I understand why you would do that. You get more even compression because you have one dampener on each side. Of the arm versus if you only have one, right? There's going to be a bias. So that's probably why Tekin did it. One of the reasons. The other reason too is they were already using this style of dampener on the slash. It's very similar to the rear. And here we go. All right. Almost finished. And because I keep talking about dampeners, well, this is a front, but they're very, very similar. If I get one of the rear ones for you, here, let's see. So I'll have a GTR, and then go into my bag of Traxxas parts. This is a stock dampener off of a slash. This is the dampener from a Tmaxx. I mean, they are very similar. Very, very similar. They would actually fit. So these would fit. So if you have a bunch of these from your slash, you can use them. I would not, though, because the plastic caps do pop off the plastic bodies. But I mean, the GTRs, again, this is what I would go with. I mean, these are really good ones to go with, and then I will show you that they will fit. Just need to remove this just so I can put a little nut that goes in here. Some castle nut. Then I like going left until I feel the click, then I'll start going right, just so I don't cross thread. But these here, maybe I'll do it during the build. That way I don't take that much time to tear down. But alright, so I'll show you during the build, once I'm building everything. I wouldn't get sidetracked too much. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and remove the bumper. And the bumper, you only have these 4 screws here, right? It's 2 on each side. I'm going to go ahead and take those off. And the bumper screws straight onto the bulkhead. So I'm going to put, let's see, bumper over here. Now, one of the, I guess, downsides of these screws is that you have fine threads and coarse threads, like those self-threading screws. So that means even though they are Phillips 2s, you still have to have 2 different types of screws. So just consider replacing all of the screws with hexes. They're much better. You'll strip less of them. Well, assuming you have good tools. All right. So this is it. Now, one of the biggest differences between the front and the rear is there's no steering, which is just makes it easier. one less thing to worry about. But you're going to do the same thing. You just remove these two screws here from the bulkhead. So these screw the bottom skid plate to the bulkhead. And I'm only going to do this half. If you can do one half, you can do the other half. That's the reason why, although I will be taking the differential out. All right, so this is loose, so this bulkhead is no longer attached to the bottom. Now at this point, I will be removing the shock tower. And one of the things about the bulkhead is the bulkhead does get in the way of the screw. So if you were to replace these with the hex screws, you may want to consider getting the drivers that have the ball at the end so that you can work at an angle. Or for here, you can just leave these on. If you're watching this and you've owned a Tmaxx for some time, or even an Emax, what are the parts you usually break? Go ahead and share in the comments. Here we're going to go through a whole teardown, so it doesn't matter what parts you break. I'm going to show you how to tear this down so you'll be able to replace them. This mount, I am going to have to add screws, but once I have the body, this here just comes off, it slides in, and then you match the hole, once you get the height, and then you just drive a screw right in there, in those adjustments. So I'm going to leave that there. Great. So now I'm going to remove this side. That's the side that I took the screws off. I'm just going to remove this one here. And this screw pin is just like the front. So you're just going to unthread it. Once it's unthread, you can sort of grab it and pull and twist, or you could grab pliers and then just grab it by the head and then sort of twist and pull. And that is it. So we have the long one. And here goes the short one. And there's the short one. So very similar to the front. And this can now slide out. Do you have to remove the link? That's the one thing I missed. So here's the one for the link. And it's almost out. There it is. And remove the screw for the link. Here we go. And that is it. So this will come out and remove it from the bulkhead. It was actually a very tight fit from the factory. I don't really like that. So that's something else. These vehicles do come pre-assembled. So one of the things that you can do is check the tolerances. This arm, for example, this feels somewhat tight, so you may want to consider removing some material. Again, I'm not going to do this right now. I'll do it later. But you would just grab a blade or sandpaper or a file, and you would just file some material off the arms right here, or even the bulkhead for that matter. So here, to remove the arm, it's very simple. On the front, we actually did the arm, the top arm, so I'm just going to show you the bottom arm, but they're removed the same way. So you have that metal ball here with the stud that comes out, that just screws onto the arm here. So you just need a 2.5 millimeter driver, and then you're just going to turn, and you're just going to twist until this comes off. That is all that you're doing. And then the arm comes off, and that is all you do. Now, you do the same thing to the bottom, And if you want to remove this, so you want to get rid of this, you will just have to grab an Allen wrench that fits here, put the Allen wrench, and then just back this out. This will come out, and then you just push this through, and that is it. So right now, for example, one of the things that I will be needing to do once I have it assembled is I'm going to back this out just a little, and then, because this is too tight. So somebody worked on this. I don't think this is the way it came from the factory, but this is way too tight. Way too tight. The nice thing though is they're two separate metal pieces, so you can adjust this one without disturbing this one, which is very nice. Now there are other RCs out there that come with a similar suspension. And they all work the same. Just do that. Do not over tighten this. Once it's tight, just flip the arm. That's all you do. These things will move completely. And the reason why some companies use these is just for the articulation. That's the reason why. But here it is. So let's go ahead and remove this here. Let's just say you were servicing, replacing the shafts, or servicing. See, this one does have a shim. You would just do that. So this pops off. You slide this pin out, and then you pull this, and that is it. Since I'm here, I know I keep saying I'm going to clean everything afterwards, but I find myself cleaning as I'm talking. Now, here, this is where you grab your driver, and grab that there. All right, and you're just going to stick your driver inside, and there's going to be a gap between the two bearings, and that's what you're aiming for. So in there's a gap between the two bearings. That it looks like a little black ring in the camera. But that's where this goes, and then you just push, pop the bearing out, and then you can see the bearing there. Just set your driver there, and then you push again, and the bearings pop out. Sometimes they will pop out easier than others. It happens. So just be patient. Don't stab yourself with the driver. You can get some help too, especially if you're younger. Let's just say you're a 7-year-old and you got a cool Tmaxx. Have an adult help you. And some people are probably thinking, like, oh, 7-year-old with a Tmaxx? What? I mean, maybe. I can understand, but for those of you that have a Tmaxx, how old were you when you got your Tmaxx? How old were you when you got your first RC car? I mean, just put that in the comments. I'm curious. I was 5. I was 5 when I got my first. It was a was it Nikko, Nikko RC. It was awesome. I loved it. There we go. This is back when nickel cadmium batteries were the thing. So you're just going to place these, and then they'll just slide back in place. The bearings will. And then you grab this. I'll just go in here. Bearings feel fine. And then this will just go on top. And you slide the pin back in. Now, these hexes, these are in good shape, but I would recommend you go with aluminum hexes. They're much better hexes, especially if you're running power. I mean, this thing had, the original motor was probably a 2.1 or 2.5 motor, or somewhere in between. This motor is now at 3.3, so it will have more power. So that'll probably be something that will need changing. But anyway, that's how you do this. This link here, you can use some pliers or a wrench. It's better that you use the wrench, and then just screw this one out, and then this will be free. One of the other things that I have not mentioned is these links here are not marked, which is a problem. Usually there's a little mark that lets you know which is the left thread, which one's the right thread, because the threads are different. So when you're adjusting, you know whether to go forward or back. And then you'll know if you go forward if it'll open or close. Doesn't, as long as they're all the same in the vehicle, that's really what matters. So it doesn't matter if you tighten going forward or if you tighten going back, as long as you know which way it tightens. But where I'm going with this is you may want to mark them with something, somehow. All right, so here's the bulkhead. Now, I did say I was going to remove the differential, so here we go. Now, one thing, oh my goodness, just remove this. All right, there we go. Yeah, this is going to need some cleaning after some serious taking apart and cleaning. Why don't you do it now? Because it'll take too long for the purpose of the video, that's why. This is the differential, so this goes in there, the screws are on this side. And we're going to do the same process as we did in the front, so it's a 2mm driver. And these little screw pins will just come out, so these little oppressors. And here we go. So I'm just going to do that, and then this just come out. So if you have to remove the shafts to replace them, which you probably will at some point, that's how you would do this, especially in cold weather. These things snap in cold weather. Consider the Traxxas upgrades. They are very nice. Those, I believe they're steel. And then there's other brands that make some too. Proline may make some. MIP, I believe, makes some. They do for Slash. So I'm sure they probably make them for this as well. But this is all you do. Now I'm only going to remove this side, sorry, this side, not that side. It's the same process. You remove that pin, this will slide out. This here, look at the orientation, so pay attention to the orientation. If you don't worry about it. But these are toward the top, so that's the top, this is the bottom. And they're also toward the rear. Notice how, if you look at the center line of this collar, they're further that way. So this is toward the differential. So keep that in mind. That will be important when assembling. Now I will install it backwards on purpose just so you can see that there's really no way to screw this up because it won't fit. So you'll quickly figure out that there is something wrong. But let me go ahead and open the rear differential. The rear differential, once you've removed that collar, it's just these two screws in the back. And that is it. So you have the two screws in the back. Then this little case will just pop open. The front one was actually easier to open. There we go. And here you have it. So here is your pinion gear. Now, this bearing, this rear bearing, the bearings just slide off. I'm going to leave this here. This one is actually quite grimy. I just need to take the entire thing apart. These bearings, something that you can do to clean them is you can just drop them in oil. Just kind of leave them there for a while. And that'll help. So if you have something with just oil, just drop them and leave them in there so they're covered with oil. I would, but I need to finish this, then I can do everything at the end. Or if you've had this for, say, 10 years, however long, just get a bearing kit and replace them. Just replace all the bearings in the vehicle. It will be night and day performance if you replace your worn out, grimy bearings with a fresh set of ball bearings. There we go. All right, there's another bearing there. That one looks pretty good. But this is it. And then your differential, well, it's attached, so I can't remove it. But you would just remove this. And if you watch the first video, I'll remove it. You have to remove this in order to service it. Here we go. There we go. And that is it. So those are the 4 screws you would remove, and you would use a Phillips #1 driver. And that is it. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this. And we're just going to apply just a little bit of grease, actually. It doesn't need any, really, but I'm just going to apply a little grease. Whatever excess grease, it will just fly off into the case. You do not want to over grease because it'll just create resistance. Your vehicle will just be slow. That's something that I learned when I was a kid. All right, here we go. That's when I was first getting into nitro. Close it, spin it, and then by spinning it, the grease will just, from the ring gear, will just get on the pinion gear, and that'll be it. But anyway, that is it for the differential. So I can go ahead and install this. And then after I install this, I'll install the 2 little screws to fix the differential in place. I remember there's some other brands that make shafts. One of them was, I think it's Intigi. But they use slightly different screws, so you need to make sure you thread lock those. Because if you lose them, you cannot use the Traxxas ones. They're a different size. I believe that was the brand. They had really cool colors. I think it was silver, blue, red, green. Just the anodizing on the shafts. Well, on the external one. And, you know, that's one of the nice things about Traxxas. So Traxxas, I'm not saying it's the best for the money, not at all. I'm not saying it's the worst for the money, not at all. It's a great vehicle to start with, but the what I like about them is the customization. If you're looking for something you can customize, Traxxas, there's so much stuff out there. Oh, I was going to install this backwards on purpose. All right, so if you install this backwards, as I did now, when you try setting it on the bulkhead, you see that and this. This is where the differential goes. Now it won't seat. And let's just say you installed it upside down and you try to place this upside down. Well, it won't seat either. Let's just say you install it the correct direction, but upside down. So now it's like this. Well, you got it. It's sat, but now it's pointing at a sharp angle upwards, so it won't fit. The shafts won't seat. So that's how you will know. If you just play with it, you will see how it sits, and then after a while, you'll just remember how it goes just by looking at it. So let's say that we assembled this entire portion just as we did this. You would just grab this here, slide on the shaft, and it would just sit in there. That key's in, that key's in. And that is all you do. So now you could just grab this, flip it, which is actually what I would do, and attach the bulkhead. So I would install the bulkhead first, and then I would work with everything else. This way parts aren't moving and just wiggling about. This is much easier. All right, here we go. We're almost there, and I'm just getting it close. I'm not tightening it the whole way. I will finish tightening it after I tighten this one. So the first one is really just to line it up, seat it, and the second one is the one that I drive down, tighten, and then I'll finish tightening the other. So this one here is the one that I shall tighten. Here we go. All right, and that is now tight. All right, now what I want to do is I'm going to put these shafts and install them. And if you notice this groove, that's where your driver goes. So this will just slip in here. Remember, these are keyed, since they are not perfect circles. Right, your 2mm driver, and then just apply some pressure. Well, first I have to line it up. And it's not lined up, is it? Nope. All right, it's further in. There we go. No, doesn't want to. There it is. All right. So these are good vehicles. If you can get a vehicle secondhand to work on, they're great to learn on. Just keep in mind that you may end up spending a lot of time and money on just getting it in running shape to get it running. For example, this one here, the engine is actually a new engine. Everything else was already part of the vehicle, but just the engine itself was new. Well, that's what I was told, and it does look new, so there's no reason for me to think otherwise. So you have to kind of balance everything out. To buy the Tmaxx Classic at this time of this video, you can find them new with a smaller engine for maybe $390, so just under $400. You can buy the Tmaxx 3.3 for about $490. So it's a $100 difference, so almost $500. All right. Well, here's the thing. To fix this vehicle here, as I mentioned, it's about $100 for just the servos that you will need. It's going to be about $150, a little more, for just the dampeners. So you're looking at $250, probably $260. Let's just say $260. Now I'm factoring in a 10% for tax, if you pay tax in your state or your region. And then you will need a transmitter and a receiver, which will be 3-channel. If you buy the factory Traxxas, I believe they run for about $120, $130 plus tax, right? Closer to $135. So that means that now you are up at about, say, $380, $385. It doesn't matter. That's your price. So you're thinking, wow, I might as well buy a new one. Maybe, maybe not. And the reason why is I decided to go with the stock Traxxas transmitter just to have one, but the transmitter alone was $60. So it's actually less for the transmitter and the receiver, because the receivers generally run about $45, I believe. I could be wrong. But I already had a receiver. I actually took it out of my Slash, because on the Slash I put my Futaba receiver. Right, so then I'm running that transmitter, so I already had a receiver. So that's the other thing too. If you already have a radio that's a 3-channel radio, at least a 3-channel, right? You can use a 4-channel, just don't run the 4th channel. Or install lights on the 4th channel. That would be neat. Then it is a good deal because you're saving the money on the transmitter. So really you would only be spending the, I believe I said $250, assuming that is all you need, right? You only need the dampener springs and there we go. The servos. So assuming that is all you need. Now this pin will just go in here, right? You just slide in. So if you pay for a vehicle like this, I have no idea how much you could pay. You paid $100, $150. $150 is the most I would pay, to be honest, for something like this. Then you're looking at, say, $250 and $150. So that's $400. You could have purchased the Tmaxx Classic. Yeah, that is true. But here's the thing. The Tmaxx Classic would come with the rubbish dampeners, so you would probably end up replacing them anyway. So that's $100. So the Tmaxx, you actually would have paid, say, the $400 new plus the $100 in, well, no, it'd be $150. So you're actually paying say $400 plus $450, that's $550. So now that project is $150 more. Yes, you got a new one, but you still had to upgrade the same parts. And then it comes with the smaller engine. Well, now you buy the other engine. So buying the Tmaxx Classic would actually be more expensive than just fixing this, with or without the transmitter. Now let's just say you went with the 3.3. All right, I have the 3.3, has the transmitter. And it has the larger engine. Great. Dampeners you're still going to have to replace. So that's still $150 that you're going to have to spend. So that truck was $500 plus $150. You're looking at $650 just to get it in a similar condition as this. So let's just say you spent a high amount of money on something like this, $150, right? Something that isn't running, but you have an engine that hopefully is good. I'm hoping it's a good engine. I was told the engine was new. That's the only reason why I purchased this. If you buy this and all you need are the dampeners, transmitter, receiver, and the servos, you're going to spend $100 on the servos, $150 on the dampeners with springs. That's $250 plus the $150 that I said. That's $400. And then if you already have the transmitter, who cares? If you don't have the transmitter, all right, that's $100 more. So that's the same price. So say $500, you have something that is good and running with great dampeners. So that's $500 and you get everything: transmitter, upgraded dampeners, versus the Tmaxx Classic. You upgrade the dampeners, you're now at $550, so it's $50 more, and you still have a smaller engine. So those are things to consider. But anyway, this is now fully assembled, and that is it. So the next step, we will take the chassis and we'll work with all the components in the chassis and start replacing electronics. Thanks for watching.